They know that sustainability sells. Rather, the illusory perception of sustainability sells. Doesn't have to actually be sustainability. The point is, these companies are willing participants in a destructive system, and nothing they can do could possibly counteract the effects of their destruction as long as they are still producing hundreds of millions of clothes every year. Maximizing profits or sustainability? You can't have both. In the 2023 sustainability report by fast fashion giant H&M, they make statements like, "Our focus is on creating further conditions for increased sales. And by 2030, we aim to double our revenue while at the same time halving greenhouse gas emissions." As long as companies are seeking to maximize their profits, any sustainability efforts that they do will be done in vain, chasing breathlessly after the damage done by their own mass overproduction. A message to every fast fashion brand: the most sustainable thing you could do is quite literally to stop existing. Hey y'all, it's Sarah Maria. Welcome back to my channel where we break down the problem of consumerism and its intersection with other systems of oppression, taking a deep dive into how we can be more conscious consumers and people in general. As the issues of environmental degradation and climate change become more and more important, brands face increasing pressure to take action. Their hands are being held to the fire to show that they care about the environment or else get canceled. So naturally, in protection of their profits, they will take action, saying things like, "We support circular fashion, so return your old garments at one of our stores and receive a $15 coupon towards your next purchase." Seriously? Very counterintuitive to claim to support circular fashion while simultaneously promoting the continued consumption of new clothes from your store. They are counting on their consumer base to either not care about fast fashion's devastating effects on the environment, or to be naive enough to believe them when they make empty claims and spew catchy taglines to cosplay Greta Thunberg. Fast fashion wants us to think they be out here advocating for Mother Earth like Greta, when they are exactly what climate activists are fighting against. They pretend like they're on our side while continuing to pour so much fuel into the machine that is turning Earth into an uninhabitable environment. Let's get into it. The fast fashion system has devastating consequences for the environment. According to the UN Environment Program, the fast fashion industry is the second biggest consumer of water, second only to agriculture. The garment dyeing process alone is highly water intensive. To produce only about 1,400 pieces of clothing, a production mill may use up to 200 tons of water. And it's estimated that around 100 billion garments are produced every year. The amount of water it takes just to dye these garments is unimaginable. Meanwhile, you have entire communities of people all over the world that do not have access to potable drinking water. Unacceptable. Now that's just water consumption. We also have to add water pollution into the conversation. For the record, every stage of garment production contributes greatly to water pollution, but for now, let's focus in specifically on the garment dyeing process. 20% of all industrial water pollution is caused by fabric dyes and treatments. And the wastewater from textile plants is considered the most polluting of all industrial sectors. These textile mills discharge millions of gallons of hazardous toxic waste. Azo dyes, for example, which account for up to 70% of all dyes used in the industry, are known carcinogens. Additionally, components of these dyes that make it into oceans, rivers, and streams block the penetration of sunlight for marine organisms, which allows for the creation of masses of invasive algae. Algae can grow very quickly and disrupt the balance of native marine life, such as fish, other kinds of marine plants, and coral reefs. Until the mid-19th century, the majority of dyes were produced naturally. For example, Native Americans used plants and roots such as madder root, indigo, and cochineal insects to boil and extract dye. Mauvine, a synthetic mauve pigment derived from aniline, was produced in 1856, and since then, synthetic dyes have dominated the industry. Synthetic dyes are more affordable, can be made in a wider variety of colors, and are very easy to produce. More affordable, easier to produce. The use of these phrases as justification for taking shortcuts that cause harm is a direct result of capitalism and mass production for the sake of economic prosperity. Fast fashion is just one example of an industry that puts profit at the top of the priority list. In fact, it seems like that's the only thing on the list. They resort to synthetic substances because they are producing so much that they've surpassed the limits of the natural world. That should be a key sign that something is going horribly wrong. But profit over everything, I guess. Synthetic chemicals that wreak havoc on our natural bodies and our natural environment just must be used because it's cheaper and we can make more of it, duh. I'll expand on this a lot more in a future video, breaking down all the chemicals that are in our clothes, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's get back to the issue of environmental degradation. On top of water pollution, there's even worse land pollution. 92 million tons of textile waste ends up in landfills every year. Because it's so difficult to conceptualize units of weight that large, to put things in perspective, this means that the equivalent of a truck full of clothes is dumped in landfills every second. Truck of clothes dumped, truck of clothes dumped, truck of clothes dumped, truck of clothes dumped. I said this in a previous video, but the US alone throws away 14 million tons of textiles annually. That's around 2,000 pieces of clothing getting thrown away every second. There are so many sites throughout the global south that turn into textile wastelands. Some of them include the neighborhood called Old Fadama in Ghana and the Atacama Desert in Chile. Millions and millions of tons of textile waste ends up in these sites every year. So much that an entire economy based on selling secondhand clothes has emerged in these places. The Kantamanto market is a famous example of this. It's a huge secondhand market in Accra, the capital of Ghana. Because the sheer amount of clothes coming in is too high and the quality is worsening with each passing year, 40% of the clothes that come into Kantamanto market end up leaving as waste to go to the landfills. This pollutes the surrounding neighborhoods like Old Fadama, as well as surrounding beaches and rivers. The piles of textile waste are around 20 meters tall sometimes, and they line the entire shore of some beaches. A quick little side note, some may argue that the import of these secondhand clothes is good for the economy, it provides jobs, and it gives people a way of making money. To that, I must say, imagine what other things these communities would be able to dedicate their time and energy to if they were not drowning in textile waste from the West. The fact that their livelihood has been reduced to selling unwanted clothing waste is not a good thing. It is simply a population of people adapting to the cards they've been dealt. And the cards they've been dealt are those of the everlasting effects of colonialism. Western powers once again destroying any chance of real self-determination and ravaging natural resources in the process, while effectively evading accountability the whole time. To add to the textile waste problem, as the clothes sit and decay, all the toxic chemicals like the synthetic dyes we talked about earlier, along with microplastics from synthetic fibers like polyester, and a myriad of other harmful substances, seeps into the soil, the water, the air. Much of this waste actually gets burned because there is simply nowhere for it to go, and that releases even more of these harmful substances into the air. And then there's the issue of greenhouse gas emissions, which are contributing to the overheating of our planet. Fast fashion contributes 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions because it is an industry that's heavily reliant on fossil fuels. The increasing production of synthetic fibers like polyester is heavily oil dependent. Nike and Inditex, which is Zara's parent company, each use 10 million gallons of oil annually. 10 million gallons of oil. While these same brands make claims to cut their greenhouse gas emissions and become carbon net neutral, they are still directly driving the continued extraction of fossil fuels for the production of their clothes. Now that we've established the environmental harm done by the fast fashion industry, we have to talk about the commodification of sustainability. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, brands understand that it's important for the public to perceive them as doing the right thing. That's a critical component of their profit-making ability. It's the same idea as politicians pandering to different groups in their constituency, saying anything they can to win the vote, but not actually taking any meaningful action. Let's break down a few examples of brands pandering to and ultimately manipulating us with regards to sustainability. Uniqlo's All Product Recycling Initiative is a program they started in which you can bring your old Uniqlo garments to one of their stores and they donate them to various organizations, including services for the homeless and refugee support agencies. Uniqlo put out this video in 2014.
Uniqlo produces and sells 600 million pieces of clothes annually. Through its All Product Recycling Initiative, Uniqlo has shared about 10 million pieces of clothing.
Like they thought this was a flex? Let me get this straight. They were producing 600 million garments every year. That's ridiculous, for one. And they donated 10 million of them in the span of 8 years. 600 million garments every year times 8 years equals 4.8 billion garments that they produced in 8 years. Of those 4.8 billion, they donated 10 million of them. 10 million over 4.8 billion equals a measly 0.2%. That's embarrassing. No, but on a serious note, you thought you ate? 0.2%. How do you produce 4.8 billion garments and then collect and donate less than 1% of them and expect praise? Expect a Nobel Peace Prize? There's no denying that donating 10 million used garments is a great accomplishment, and I'm sure that those garments had a positive impact on the people who received them. So for that, I give them props. However, in the context of their production levels, 10 million becomes minuscule. The other 99.8% of the garments you produced, some of them definitely are in people's closets, getting worn or gathering dust, okay? And the rest in landfills, most likely. That is not something to be proud of. Yet they present these numbers to us hoping that we won't realize it just doesn't add up. If they were truly about sustainability, their production levels would be much lower and their donated garment percentage would be much higher. You get what I'm saying? Ultimately, they get you to come back to the store to recycle your old garments, knowing that most likely you will buy more stuff while you're there, or at the very least, you'll have a look around. Recycle one garment, buy 5 more. That's exactly what they want. That's why they give you $10 off your next purchase when you bring in your old garments to recycle. We must never forget that they are a business before anything. While they try to do humanitarian, non-profit-esque, environmentally friendly things, they are not a non-profit. Whether they actually care to do good things or whether they just want to look good for the public is above me. The point is, these companies are willing participants in a destructive system, and nothing they can do could possibly counteract the effects of their destruction as long as they are still producing hundreds of millions of clothes every year. Another example is H&M. H&M talks a lot about sustainability, so much so that they have received international recognition for their earth-loving efforts. They talk of their collaboration with Hong Kong Research Institute and the use of the innovative green machine, sometimes referred to as the loop machine, which takes recycled textiles, old clothes, and turns them into new wearable clothes. They sell it as an innovative solution to the problem of textile waste. Great, right? Not exactly. According to The Insider, it takes 3 days to recycle just one garment. So it would take 50,000 years for the machine to deal with just 1 week of textile waste produced by the fast fashion industry. 50,000 years. Additionally, this machine still requires the addition of some virgin fibers like raw cotton into the recycled textiles to make it stronger. While the machine is innovative and has potential to contribute to circular fashion, it stands no chance against the overproduction perpetrated by the fast fashion industry. Let's dive a little deeper. In 2013, H&M started their own garment collection program similar to Uniqlo, which allows customers customers to bring their old unwanted garments into an H&M store, and in exchange they receive a $15 coupon towards their next purchase. H&M says since 2013, we have received 172,700 tons of textiles. Now let's see. H&M produces an estimated 3 billion garments every year. Stay with me on this journey. One garment is about 1 pound, so 3 billion garments is like 3 billion pounds of clothes. 3 billion pounds is equivalent to 1.3 million tons. So in 10 years from 2013 to 2023, they've collected 172,000 tons in total. If we calculate the amount of clothes they produced within that 10 years, 1.3 million tons a year times 10 years equals 13 million tons. 172,000 tons is what they collected through their garment recycling initiative. Divide that by 13 million tons, a measly 1.3% of everything they produced was collected by their garment recycling program. Now, that's just what was collected. In January 2023, 2 Swedish reporters brought 10 garments to several H&M garment recycling collection points, and they placed air tags on them to track their journey. I translated the article from the Swedish reporter's website. They say, on H&M's website, you can read that the garment collection is guaranteed by the collaboration with their partner iCollect, a well-known sustainability initiative in the textile industry, and that the sorting takes place at a facility outside Berlin. After they drop off the garments, they track them leaving Sweden and ending up at different sorting facilities in Germany. So far, so good, right? Upon Googling the addresses, none of the clothes have arrived at iCollect's sorting facility as H&M promised. Instead, they have been sold to 3 commercial companies that sort and export secondhand clothing, subtitled Alta West and Retextiles. After 5 weeks, one of the jackets they're tracking moves back north to a place called Bremerhaven, one of Europe's largest container ports. The signal is then lost for a few months, and it picks back up in India, in a city called Panipat. The place is known as the garment dumping center of India. 20,000 women, men, and children work to cut textiles with vegetable knives so that the pieces can be ground down and become threads with which simple blankets are then woven. The dumps are overflowing with clothing waste here as well. One hoodie they were tracking was sent to a facility in Poland where clothing waste is ground down. Another ended up in a similar facility in Germany. These ground fibers that were recently wearable clothes are likely turned into cleaning cloths, the Swedish reporters explain. They say recycling textile fibers may sound good, but the climate benefit is lower than if the garment had continued to be used as a garment. Because keep in mind, to break down textiles and turn them into something new, yes, they may not end up in landfills, but they're still using energy to fuel that process. They're still contributing to some form of pollution because that's a factory and machines that are carrying out that process. Finally, 2 garments they were tracking ended up in Ghana and Benin, where they most likely became just one of the millions of garments that end up there to be sold in secondhand markets and ultimately to end up in landfills. Josephine Daly Tempelar writes, what H&M is currently doing is known as waste colonialism. This is when a group of people uses waste and pollution to dominate another group of people in their homeland. The term was coined back in 1989 when growing concerns were expressed about the dumping of toxic waste by high GDP countries into low GDP countries. By sending our waste to countries with fewer resources, H&M manages to successfully push the pollution problem out of sight and out of mind from the Western world. So the 2 main points I made here are 1, they recycle only 1.3% of their production. So their whole sustainability illusion is having negligible effects in comparison to their overproduction. And 2, even of the 1.3% that gets collected by the garment recycling program, an even smaller percentage of that actually gets recycled. The European Commission says that less than 1% of clothing fabric waste is actually used to produce new clothing. That's because recycling clothing is a much more intensive process than recycling paper, glass, even plastic bottles. It's so intensive because firstly, All buttons, zippers, sequins, patches have to be removed. Secondly, the majority of clothes today are produced with blended textiles. According to the Washington Post, sorting and detangling blended textiles is costly and time-consuming. Accidentally allowing too much of a synthetic fiber, such as spandex, into the recycling stream can cause the whole process to break down, destroying the machines. For this reason, clothes made of more than one type of fiber are generally considered unrecyclable. So all your clothes that are 20% cotton and 80% acrylic, 50% spandex, and 50% polyester, unrecyclable. So while H&M is so adamant to let the whole world know about their latest and greatest garment recycling program, they conveniently forget to mention a couple of very key things. One being, they are not making any efforts to lower their production rates, so any garment recycling is kind of pointless. Two, like I said, the majority of clothes today are made with blended textiles. Even on the H&M website, we can see that much of their clothing is made from blended textiles, meaning that even if you bring it back to them to recycle it, it likely won't even make it that far. Maybe it will end up being sold secondhand, but the secondhand market is so oversaturated already, as we can see by the Continental market. H&M says items that are not able to be sold secondhand or recycled into something new are disposed of in other ways, prioritizing incineration for energy production. It's not far-fetched to assume that your recycled garment that you drop off to them will probably end up in a landfill, or it'll be incinerated, which also pollutes. To bring this all the way back around to the commodification of sustainability, we have to understand why these brands are working so hard to convince us of their so-called environmental consciousness. It's because it sells. It keeps people coming back, like we mentioned with garment recycling programs, bringing people back to the stores and giving them coupons towards their next purchase. And on a deeper level, it capitalizes on what I call the sleepy consumer. The sleepy consumer is someone who hears no evil, sees no evil. It's someone who doesn't want to change their ways, so they find the first excuse for them to not have to. Amidst these conversations of fast fashion's catastrophic consequences, this pseudo-sustainability, also known as greenwashing, gives the sleepy consumer just what they need to stay asleep. Like, look, they're doing good for the environment. Swipes credit card. Wow, they're gonna recycle my old dresses. Now I can buy 5 more. Swipes credit card. Ultimately, the real problem with fast fashion is overproduction. They're using synthetic dyes and fabrics like polyester more and more because they are overproducing. These synthetic chemicals go on to pollute our land, air, and water. They're sending millions and millions of tons of textile waste to other countries because they are overproducing, and they are heavily reliant on fossil fuels because they are overproducing. And why are they overproducing? For money. Now they're engaging in massive greenwashing campaigns. For what? For money. They have to keep their consumer base pleased, and in order to do that, they have to make it seem like they care about us and they care about the things we care about. They know that sustainability sells. Rather, the illusory perception of sustainability sells. It doesn't have to actually be sustainability. They sell us their 100% recycled fabrics collection and garment recycling initiative and carbon net neutral project so that they can continue to have consumer support. While there may be good people who truly want change that are heading these sustainability initiatives at these companies, nothing will make a dent as long as these companies keep producing hundreds of millions of pieces of clothing a year, and as long as they keep advertising and enticing consumers to buy more and more and more. Like I said in the beginning of this video, the most sustainable thing fast fashion could do is to stop existing, stop producing. A system that is in itself destructive cannot counteract its own destruction without destroying itself. We have to break our addiction to this system, stop supporting this system, and take action towards building a better one. We can't rely on or trust these companies to do that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear them. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of my past ones and subscribe and turn on your post notifications so you can be notified for future uploads. And I also have an Instagram called @FightBigFashion where I make infographics and share resources all about breaking down the fast fashion system and fighting against consumerism. I will see you guys in the next video. Ciao!